They told you it was about progress, a golden spike connecting a nation, the greatest achievement in American history. But that photo is a lie. The Transcontinental Railroad wasn't built to run trains. It was built to steal from you. What if I told you that tracks curved on purpose? Not for mountains, but because corrupt men got paid by the mile? This is the story of the Crédit Mobilier scandal, the original rug pull, a blueprint for financial fraud written in 1864. And the scary part, the system they created is still running today, in defense contracts, in infrastructure bills, in your wallet. From the Gilded Age to modern government contracts, the grift never changes. Only the logo does. They bought the watchdogs. They bought the vice president. They bought the future. And you paid for it. Do you feel richer or poorer than your grandparents? Don't answer yet. Watch this, and you'll understand why. Welcome to the true history of the American economy. It's time to follow the money.
You know this photo. May 10, 1869, the Golden Spike, East meets West. The Transcontinental Railroad, complete. A new era of American prosperity begins. That's the story they sell you. But what if the railroad in that picture was built to fail? What if I told you the tracks curved on purpose? Not because of mountains or rivers, but because someone got paid per mile, and curvy miles pay more than straight ones. What if the men shaking hands in those photos didn't care if a single train ever ran, because they'd already stolen the money? We think rug pulls started with crypto, some token that pumps, dumps, and disappears. Founders vanish, investors hold bags. Modern crime, right? Wrong. The blueprint wasn't written on a blockchain. It was written in 1864 on government paper with a quill pen, by men in top hats who understood one thing better than anyone alive today. If you control the contract, you control the cash. This is the Crédit Mobilier scandal, the first great American rug pull. And by the time this video ends, you'll see it everywhere. Infrastructure bills, defense contracts, green energy subsidies. The grift never changes. Only the logo. Videos like this don't get recommended. YouTube doesn't push content that makes you question infrastructure spending, or government contracts, or who actually profits when Congress writes a check. So if this resonates, if something in you just said, yeah, I've been lied to, hit the like button. Not for me, for the algorithm. Make it hurt to bury this. And here's the question I want you to answer in the comments. Do you feel richer or poorer than your grandparents did at your age? Don't overthink it. Just answer, because by the end of this video, you'll know exactly why you feel that way. 1862. The Civil War is tearing the country apart. Lincoln needs California. More specifically, he needs California's gold to fund the war, gold to keep the Union alive, gold to pay soldiers who are dying in fields from Virginia to Tennessee. But there's a problem. California might as well be on another continent. No roads, no telegraph that works reliably, just months of dangerous travel through hostile territory, around Cape Horn by ship, or overland through land controlled by people who have zero interest in helping the Union. Lincoln's solution? The Pacific Railroad Act. Signed in 1862, expanded in 1864, the government would pay private companies to build a transcontinental railroad. 2 carrots, both massive. First, land grants. For every mile of track you laid, you got huge chunks of public land on both sides of the railway. Land you could sell, land you could lease, land that would be worth a fortune once the train started running. Second, bonds, government loans. $16,000 per mile if you were building on flat prairie, $32,000 per mile in the foothills, $48,000 per mile if you claimed you were crossing mountains. Now, to you and me, that sounds like a reasonable deal. The government de-risks a massive infrastructure project. Private companies do the hard work. Everyone wins. America gets connected. Progress happens. Except, that's not remotely what happened. The men who controlled the Union Pacific Railroad, men like Thomas Durant, did the math. And they realized something that should have been obvious, but somehow Nobody in Congress thought about it. Running a railroad through 2,000 miles of empty desert, hostile territory, and actual wilderness might take decades to generate profit. Maybe it never would. Passengers, limited. Cargo, uncertain. Revenue, pure speculation. But the construction pays immediately. See, the government wasn't paying based on results. It was paying based on miles. You didn't get a bonus for laying quality track. You didn't get extra money if your trains ran on time or if settlers actually used the railway. You got paid per mile, period. This is the shift. This is where the entire scam begins. In a normal business, you build a factory to sell a product. The product is the point. The product generates revenue. The factory is just the tool. But Thomas Durant looked at the Pacific Railroad Act and saw it backwards. He saw that the construction itself was the product, the government was the customer, and the customer was paying cash up front for every mile you claim to build, which means you don't actually need the railroad to pop work. You just need to build it. Or at least say you're building it. But here's the problem Durant had to solve. How do you steal from your own company without ending up in front of a judge? How do you extract maximum cash from a project while still looking like a legitimate businessman? The answer is so simple. It's still legal in half the industries operating today. Write in the comments, I see the pattern. Now I want to go deeper into this, because what Durant created isn't just history, it's the manual. You create a shell company. Durant and his partners bought a dormant corporate charter from Pennsylvania, some failed venture that had been sitting idle. They renamed it Credit Mobilier of America. Sounds fancy, right? Sounds European. Legitimate. Like a bank. It wasn't. It was a fake construction company. And here's where the psychology gets beautiful, in the most disgusting way possible. The directors of the Union Pacific, the railroad, were the same people as the directors of Credit Mobilier, the construction company. Let that sit for a second. Same people. So Thomas Durant, wearing his Union Pacific hat, would sit down at a board meeting and say, "Gentlemen, we need to build the next 100 miles of track. Let's get bids from construction companies." Then he'd take off that hat, put on his Credit Mobilier hat, and say, "I'll do it, but it's going to be expensive, very expensive. Let's say $60,000 per mile." Now you might be thinking, wait, wouldn't the other directors object? Wouldn't someone say that's too high? They would, if they weren't all wearing the same two hats. Every single director at that table was getting paid twice. Once as a Union Pacific investor concerned about building a railroad, and again as a Credit Mobilier contractor billing for the work. In reality, it cost about $30,000 per mile to build. Laborers were paid almost nothing. Materials were cheap. The work was hard, yes, but not $60,000 per mile hard. But the Union Pacific signed the contract anyway. Paid Credit Mobilier $60,000. Used government bonds to do it. Taxpayer money. Investor money. Money that was supposed to build infrastructure. And Durant's crew pocketed the difference. $30,000 per mile. Pure profit. They were hiring themselves to do a job at double the actual cost, using someone else's money. This is self-dealing. This is fraud. But here's the sickest part. It was legal because of something called limited liability. If the Union Pacific went bankrupt later because of all this debt, because they'd overpaid themselves into oblivion, Durant's personal fortune was protected. The company could collapse. Investors could lose everything. The railroad could rot into the desert. But Durant, he'd already moved the money. And this exact structure, this exact game, is still running today. Different names, different industries, same mechanics. Government contracts where the low bid comes from a subsidiary of the same parent company awarding the contract. Infrastructure projects where the construction firm and the development firm share the same board. Green energy subsidies where the startup is just a shell for extracting tax credits. You've paid for this. Your taxes, your inflation, your national debt. And just like in 1869, the people who designed it are protected. Write in the comments, I see the machine. Let's talk numbers. By the time the Transcontinental Railroad was finished, Credit Mobilier had billed the Union Pacific roughly $94 million. The actual cost of construction, about $50 million. That's a $44 million spread, stolen, not lost, not mismanaged, not, oops, we went over budget. Stolen. In today's money, adjusted for inflation, that's over $1 billion, extracted directly from taxpayers and investors. Money that was supposed to connect a nation. Money that was supposed to build the future. It built penthouses instead. But the financial theft wasn't even the worst part. Because remember, the government was paying per mile, and if you get paid per mile, do you build a straight line? No. You make it curvy. Thomas Durant personally ordered engineers to construct what's called an oxbow route just outside Omaha, a giant, completely unnecessary curve that added 9 extra miles to the track. 9 miles of track that served zero engineering purpose. 9 miles that existed for one reason: to claim 9 extra payments from the federal government. $16,000 times 9. That's $144,000 for a curve that shouldn't exist. And that was just one section. They built tracks on top of ice, on top of snow, tracks that washed away in the spring thaw. Did they go back and fix them properly? Why would they? They'd already been paid. They built parallel grades right next to their competition, not to win contracts, but to claim the territory and trigger more payouts. They built railroads to nowhere, tracks that didn't connect to anything, didn't serve anyone, just sat there rusting while the invoices got paid. The infrastructure wasn't an asset, it was a mechanism, a machine designed to transfer wealth from the public treasury into private bank accounts. And here's what that means for you. Every time you hear about an infrastructure bill, ask yourself, who's building it? Is it a competitive bid? Or is it the same 5 companies that always win? Are they publicly traded? Or are they private LLCs where ownership is hidden? When they say a highway is going to cost $10 billion, is that the real cost? Or is someone adding curves? When a defense contract gets awarded to a new supplier, check the board, check the ownership. You'll find the same names wearing different hats. This isn't ancient history, this is the manual. And they've been running the same play for 160 years because it works. You pay, they profit. And the thing you paid for? It barely functions. That's not a bug, that's the POG. Design. Write in the comments. Follow the money. Now you might be asking, where was the government? Where were the regulators? Where was Congress? Oh, they were there. They were in on it. Enter Oaks Ames, congressman from Massachusetts, shovel manufacturer, and one of the primary directors of Credit Mobilier. Ames had a problem. He knew this scheme was massive. He knew it was brazen. And he knew that eventually, someone in Congress might start asking questions. So he executed what we now call political entrepreneurship. He took shares of Credit Mobilier stock that was paying dividends of up to 300% because of the fraud. And he sold them to his fellow congressmen at a steep discount. Not a bribe, technically not illegal, just a sweetheart deal among friends. He famously wrote in a letter that he placed the shares where they will do the most good. Translation: I'm buying the watchdogs. And who took the bait? James Garfield, future President of the United States. Schuyler Colfax, sitting Vice President under Ulysses S. Grant. James Brooks, Congressman from New York. Henry Wilson, another Vice President. These weren't backbench nobodies. These were the most powerful men in the country, the people who were supposed to regulate the railroads, the people who were supposed to protect taxpayers, and they were cashing checks from the company they were supposed to be investigating. This is the revolving door before we had a name for it. This is regulatory capture in its purest form. Wall Street and Washington in a perfect, corrupt embrace. Now here's the part that should make you angry. This wasn't illegal. Bribery? No. Ames didn't hand them cash in a dark alley. He sold them stock. At a discount, sure, but stock purchases aren't crimes. Conflicts of interest? There were no laws against that yet. Insider trading? That concept didn't exist in 1869. So when the scandal finally broke in 1872, when a disgruntled associate leaked Ames's letters to the New York Sun, when the public lost their minds and demanded justice, nobody went to jail. Ames was censured by Congress. A slap on the wrist. A public scolding. He died a year later, still wealthy, still respected in his home state. Colfax was dropped from the ticket. He didn't run for re-election, but he kept the money. Garfield? He became president. No one was prosecuted. No one returned the funds. No assets were seized. They just moved on. Because here's the truth you need to understand. This wasn't corruption. Corruption implies breaking the rules. This was the rules. The system wasn't broken. The system was working exactly as designed. The people who wrote the laws were the same people profiting from the contracts. And that system, it's still running. Different industries, different names, same structure. When a senator retires and immediately joins the board of a defense contractor they used to oversee, that's the revolving door. When a pharmaceutical company writes the healthcare bill and then lobbies the same politicians who pass it, that's Oaks Ames in a suit. When the independent regulator used to work for the company they're now regulating, that's Credit Mobilier with a website. It's not corruption, it's the business model. Write in the comments, the system is the fraud. So what do? I'm not going to lie to you and say we're going to fix the system tomorrow. We're not. I'm not running for office. You probably aren't either. And even if we were, the same people who fund the campaigns are the same people running the contracts. But here's what you can do. Stop being naive. That's it. That's the first step. Stop pretending that the people writing the checks have your best interests at heart. They don't. They have their interests at heart. And their interests involve your money flowing upward. When Congress passes an infrastructure bill, ask yourself, who's building it? Is it a competitive bid? Or is it the same three companies that always win? Are the costs public? Or are they buried in a 1,000-page document that nobody reads? When they say a project is going to cost $10 billion, is that the real cost? Or did someone add 9 miles of unnecessary curves? Follow the money every single time. When a politician talks about job creation through a new program, check who owns the companies getting the contracts. You'll find names, you'll find connections. You'll find board members who used to work in the administration that just awarded them the deal. That's not a coincidence. When a startup gets a massive government grant for green energy or AI research or infrastructure development, look at the ownership structure. Is it publicly traded where you can see who profits? Or is it a private LLC where ownership is hidden behind 3 layers of shell companies? If you can't see who owns it, you're paying them. Here's another one, insider selling. When executives or politicians suddenly start selling stock in a company, right before a new opportunity gets announced, that's not them being generous. That's them getting out before you get in. Just like Oaks Ames selling Credit Mobilier shares to Congress. He wasn't sharing the wealth. He was distributing the risk. You are the exit liquidity. You always have been. But now, you see it. And here's the thing about seeing it. You can't unsee it. You're going to watch the news differently now. When they announce a historic infrastructure package, you're not going to hear jobs and progress. You're going to hear who's getting paid. When a CEO steps down to join a government agency, and then that agency awards a contract to their former company, you're going to see the door, the revolving door. When a bill gets passed that nobody seems to understand, but everyone votes for, you're going to ask, who wrote it? This is the shift. You're not helpless. But you're also not going to win by playing their game. You win by opting out where you can. Vote with your wallet. Support companies that are transparent. Avoid the ones that live off subsidies. Demand accountability, not from politicians. They're bought, but from the system. Make noise. Ask questions. Make them. Explain the costs. And most importantly, stop thinking this is ancient history. This is today. The tools changed. The suits got nicer. The paperwork moved online. But the con? The con is identical. Write in the comments, I'm awake. If you made it this far, it wasn't by accident. Most people clicked off in the first 2 minutes. They didn't want to hear it. They wanted to believe the system works. That infrastructure spending is good. That the government is looking out for them. But you stayed. You stayed because somewhere deep down, you already knew. Something was wrong. You just didn't have the language for it yet. Now you do. The Transcontinental Railroad did change America. It connected the coasts. It moved people and goods. It built cities. But it was born in sin. It was a project designed to fail financially, so a few men could succeed. Personally, it was the original rug pull. And the playbook? Still in use. If you want more of this, if you want to understand how money and power actually work, subscribe. Not because I'm entertaining. Not because this is fun. Subscribe because someone needs to say this out loud. The algorithm doesn't want you here. Sponsors don't want this content. But if enough of us refuse to look away, they can't bury it. Drop a comment right now. Just 4 words. I see the tracks. That's the password. That's how I know you're paying attention. And if you want to see how this exact same playbook was used to trigger the Great Depression, how the same Wall Street families ran the same con in the 1920s, that video is right here. You won't believe how little has changed. See you there.